Kansas City Chiefs, where they came into this offseason with probably the most uncertainty since their last Super Bowl loss. And I'll let you put this list together with me to react to it. And I agree with most. Like, we agree on a lot of things. What was your thought process, though, putting the Chiefs? Because they had this uncertainty, but they navigated it pretty well this offseason.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, first and foremost, it's built heavily off the draft that they had. I mean, I thought Kansas City had arguably the best draft in the NFL. So that's going to be a big part of it. But I think the decisions that they've made in terms of free agency, retaining players, letting players go, I think it was a solid collection of decisions, a solid net of decisions when you take the whole lot together, right? So they trade away Joe Thuney. Now, on the one hand, you're like, well, that's their best offensive lineman, maybe, right? Or at least one of the top two. You trade him away for not a huge amount. That's crazy. But the reason they did it is because of the investment they already had in the offensive line, because of the money they're going to have to allocate to the offensive line, and because of the weaknesses they already had. So I understand cashing in there. That allowed them to retain Trey Smith on the other side, who's younger, who's got a longer-term future with the team. They brought back Charles Omenihu. They bring in Jalen Moore. They paid to do it, but I understand the roll of the dice there. Jalen Moore looked pretty good in relief of Trent Williams for San Francisco. You know, Jalen Moore for $15 million a year versus Dan Moore Jr. for $20 million a year. I mean, I understand that gamble, right? He is certainly less proven than Dan Moore, but I think he also has higher upside than Dan Moore. So for $15 million a year, $5 million a year cheaper, I get that as a gamble. I think that makes some sense. So I think overall, given the uncertainty that they had heading into this offseason, I think they did a pretty solid job of retaining the players that they wanted to retain, moving on from a guy that they were sort of boxed into a corner of needing to move on from anyway, and getting a draft pick in return for it. And then they went into the draft and I think had a phenomenal draft top to bottom.
Yeah, I mean, prior to free agency, we were like, wow, they just traded Thuney, and we don't know what they're going to do with Trey Smith, end up franchising him. And I think, there's still a long-term deal to be worked out with Trey Smith to give them a little bit more financial flexibility. I liked what they did at corner, just bringing in a Christian Fulton, because they had potential questions at corner. And now they look like they have depth there. And they went into the draft mostly with pretty good depth, Sam, and then the ability to look, the Josh Simmons draft pick and getting him at 32 overall might be the long-term solution. I think that just pairs well with the Jalen Moore signing. It pairs well to maybe solve this problem that is a serious problem, right? The Chiefs offense, I hate using the word fragile, but they've clearly had it. When they have issues at left tackle, the offense has issues. And the Chiefs are held to a much higher standard. They're held to a standard of, you've been in the AFC Championship every year since Mahomes has been the starting quarterback. The goal is championships. And if you don't win a championship for some reason, how do you fix those problems? And those problems are often at left tackle. They're often on the offensive line. And so the Chiefs have potentially solved that with a transition of Jalen Moore and the future of Josh Simmons. So I just like the way they navigated that problem, because like we said a little while ago with Washington, if you went into this offseason saying, man, I have a real left tackle, I have a tackle problem, it was a difficult offseason to navigate that, because Dan Moore is making $21 million a year, and there were not a lot of other options there. The great Morgan Moses at right tackle, I mean, he's getting older, right? There's only so many tackle options. Commanders got creative by trading for Tunsil and saying, we're willing to pay that money. I thought the Chiefs got creative by very early in free agency saying, we'll do Jalen Moore 2 years, $15 million, creep back toward average at that position, and then getting Josh Simmons, which could be the future upside. Hey, he's going to be there for the next 8 years type of play. So I thought that navigating that was creative, I thought, for the Chiefs, and worked out pretty well.
All right, that's enough of that, Steve. Over 50% of the people listening to this are not subscribed right now. So click that button, and then we can get back to whatever it is Steve's telling you about. Yeah, and now I think the plan will be to kick Kingsley Suamataia, last year's draft pick, into guard. Hopefully he can be an upgrade over what Mike Caliendo was last season. Worst case scenario, you have what Mike Caliendo was last season this season, and you know what you're dealing with there. So, I get it for that offensive line, but they were able to bring back multiple pieces on defense. Omenihu, Nick Bolton re-signed as well. Marquise Brown they brought back on offense, which I thought was sort of sneaky, a good move as well. we didn't really get to see what Marquise Brown was supposed to do to this offense last season because he got hurt almost immediately and then only came back like right at the end, in the middle of the season where it's not like you can kind of really get him up to speed to see what it's going to look like. So I think that offense is kind of a work in progress to see what the deployment of those receivers is going to look like. Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, Rashee Rice. Now you've got Jalen Royals potentially can make an impact as a draft pick, even though he was a day 3 guy. Juju Smith-Schuster is still there. Like, this is an unusual collection of receivers that I don't think we really got to see what it would look like if they have a full, off-season program and training camp, et cetera, to figure out how it all goes together.
I mean, the Marquise Brown injury and then the Rashee Rice injury in week 4, I think that changed the trajectory for what Kansas City wanted to do. Their goal coming off, remember the previous season, Mahomes had one of the worst passer rating on 20-plus yard throws. Now, they won the Super Bowl. It didn't really matter, but we came into the season saying they're going to throw deep. They're going to throw deep. They made it a point to get faster, to throw deep. Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown. And all of a sudden, once Rashee Rice went down too, it's like, well, Xavier Worthy has to be used underneath. And, maybe he's more horizontal speed for this offense right now. I think we're going to see them try for the vertical speed. So on paper, it looks dangerous with Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice working the underneath stuff and whatever Travis Kelce has left. If they all stay healthy, it's dangerous, right? So it's not. Yeah. It's part of the offseason. Like the Marquise Brown thing, I thought there'd be a little bit more of a market for him, but I think that's a big win for the Chiefs to just get him back for 1 year and try that speed experiment one more time.
Yeah, and again, it's not the perfect offseason by any means. They didn't necessarily fix a couple of issues with this team, but I do love that draft, right? Top to bottom, I think this could have been the best draft in the NFL. Josh Simmons, as we already talked about, potential long-term answer at left tackle. If he's not the answer at left tackle, he could be the answer at right tackle and let them get cheaper and move on from Juwan Taylor, who hasn't necessarily justified that contract. Omar Norman-Lott in the second round may have been a bit of a reach, but potentially immediately replaces what they lost in Tershawn Wharton in free agency. Ashton Gelati, the power edge rusher from Louisville in the third round, I think can make an immediate impact as well. Noel Williams, also in the third round, the corner from Cal, immediate return ability. That's the replacement for Mecole Hardman right out of the gate, right? The return skills, but also, to a long-term answer at corner. And then Jalen Royals in the fourth round, I think, is a steal. Jeffrey Bassa at linebacker, and then Brashad Smith. He's a 7th round pick. There was a few of these this year. I was busy writing favorite undrafted free agents, right? And 3 or 4 of them were running backs, and they all got picked in the 7th round. So, and I think all those guys can actually end up making noise on the teams they went to. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, we didn't talk about for Washington, but he could be like a real factor in that backfield. Brashad Smith could be a real factor for this Kansas City offense, even though he's a 7th round draft pick. Former wide receiver convert, obviously has receiving Scantbacky type skills because of that, but I think also has some real ability to run between the tackles once he gets a little bit more comfortable with that process. That could be a steal in the 7th round as well. So genuinely top to bottom, this is a phenomenal draft, I think.
Yeah, really like the Chiefs draft. And I think they needed it. It was a big year for them this offseason.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.